Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the board game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I am bringing you the very first episode of Grokking Twilight Imperium. Today I'm going to be telling you how to do well, what strategies to use with the clan of Saar. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that if you would like to get some cool gamer gear, t-shirts and mugs, etc., there's a link to my Teespring store in the description below. If you're in a position to and would like to support the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below, where you can get access to early videos, behind-the-scenes videos, and even the ability to request reviews for your favorite classic games. Now, the Clan of Saar is one of my personal favorite factions in the entire game of Twilight Imperium. I love how mobile they are. I love that their starting factories are different from everybody else's. They have a movement of 1. They don't attach to a planet. They have a production of 5. So they're able to move around and build as long as you're not moving into a system where you're about to be fighting someone. You can move them into an unoccupied system and then build. So you can always keep your space docks on the front line. Which is a very, very cool thing. But let's have a look at them in general and see what are some good strategies to use with the Clan of Saar. So now, let's start with what do you get when you choose to be the Clan of Saar. And FYI, I will be using all of the components from the Prophecy of Kings expansion. So this strategy video will include strategies for Prophecy of Kings components. So when you start with the Clan of Saar, you get 2 carriers, 1 cruiser, 2 freighters, 4 infantry, and a space dock. Of course, their space dock being the floating factory that can move around. Now, this does not seem like a huge amount of military might, and it's not. But the 2 carriers with 2 infantry each is fantastic for moving in and colonizing even multi-planet systems. This will really help you to spread out and help you to colonize really quickly, which, as we're about to discuss in a minute, is going to be a very major theme for the Clan of Saar. They expand very fast in the early game, and you really need to do that if you want to do well with them. So the next thing I want to talk about is their faction abilities. So they have 2 faction abilities. They have Scavenge and Nomadic. Scavenge is the main one that synergizes with their incredible speed at the beginning of the game and colonizing, because every time you take control of a planet, and keep in mind, this is a planet whether you just got it from being a neutral planet or whether you took it over during a combat from another player, but every time you take a planet, you gain a trade good. This is huge since all the planets you're gaining are going to be coming in exhausted. Getting those trade goods gives you money right away to be able to spend on other things. And there, of course, will be lots of options, especially considering their starting fleet starts out fairly militaristically weak. You're going to want to take a bunch of these trade goods along with the factory that's moving into the front lines and maybe build a bigger ship later. When you're looking to expand your fleet, what should you build? Now, my personal opinion is you should go right for a dreadnought, and I'm going to explain why. So dreadnoughts are really powerful. They have sustained damage, so they're also really tough. And the thing is, something that a lot of people tend to forget about dreadnoughts is they have a capacity of 1. It's because everybody uses them to bombard planets and do lots of damage in combat and also take damage. They forget they can carry something, which means as you're spreading out and possibly even separating your fleet, you can give this dreadnought one of the ground troops and have it go off and colonize a single planet system on its own, which is really, really useful. Also, the fact that you can have the space dock moving with you to the front lines means that the movement 1 of the dreadnought is not really going to slow you down because you'll have already moved a couple systems before you build it. So you're going to build it on the front lines, closer to Mechatol Rex or closer to one of your enemies' borders, and that will not be much of a problem. So I do recommend going right for the dreadnoughts and then maybe also getting some more ground troops so you can put one on it without having to take some away from your carriers. In addition, as every carrier has a capacity of 4, and the carriers you start with are only going to have 3 units on each of them. Your first time you build, you might want to build a couple more fighters just so they have a little added defense to those carriers. The second ability, Nomadic, is not one that you're going to get much use in the early game, but it allows you to score objectives even if you do not control the planets in your home system. This is good because you're probably going to have your fleets all leave the home system and go out to colonize as quick as possible. If somebody finds a sneaky way to try to zoom in and take over your home system to stop you from scoring objectives, it doesn't work on you. So you don't have to pay much more mind to your home system than you would any other system you control, especially since your home system planets are not particularly valuable. You have a total of 3 resources and only 1 influence on the 2 planetoids in your home system. So because of this, you can really focus on the expansion and not worry about losing your home system, even if someone is doing something sneaky and trying to take it from you. Because you're probably going to have gotten more systems that are more valuable to you in the long run. And your home system, you don't have to feel sentimental about protecting it. Focus more on the more valuable systems, and that's okay. But early game, this will not see a huge amount of use. This is just more of like a benefit to the fact that your strategy is going to be go, 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 and send everything out of your home system and not worry about protecting it at all. Now for the leaders, your starting leader that you have the ability to use is Captain Mendoza. Now Captain Mendoza is captain of the 5th Fleet, and he has a pretty nice ability that says after a player activates a system, so you can use this ability either for yourself or for someone else you're allied with, you may exhaust this card to increase the move value of one of that player's ships to match the move value of the fastest ship on the game board. Now, the reason this is going to be so awesome is you're going to get to increase the movement of your floating factories if needed, because they normally only have a movement of 1, so it might be nice to speed them up to movement 2. Your carriers only normally have a movement 1. You can use it to then further expand out faster to get to further away systems. And of course, the dreadnoughts only have a movement of 1, and once you get them out, it might be nice to speed them up to help get them into a combat. It can be really nice when you're about to attack a system and your opponent underestimates your fleet because maybe your dreadnought is 2 spaces away, not 1, and you activate it, and then you activate Captain Mendoza's ability, and the dreadnought just comes flying in, and they're like, oh crap, I didn't expect that. This is not one that's going to be used constantly, but it will have situations where it is very useful, either for sneak attacks in combat or just for being able to move faster when colonizing planets, because a lot of the ships you use to colonize only have a movement of 1. Carriers, dreadnoughts, and of course the floating factory all only have a movement of 1. So being able to speed them up to 2 really helps in the early game, and also can even help, like I said, for extra defense in the later game. Your second leader is the relay engineer, Raul Sarig. Now, Raul Sarig gets unlocked when you have 3 space docks on the board. So obviously with a faction that wants to have space docks all on all their front lines, you're going to build more space docks. So it's not very hard to get 3 space docks on the board. You're going to do that. You're going to build space docks. You're going to occasionally do the secondary ability of construction, or even take construction as your primary tactical card and get some space docks out there. Once you have 3, you get to flip him over, and his ability is that when you produce fighters or infantry, you can put them on any of your space docks that are not blockaded. So this is really cool for using multiple build actions from multiple different space docks to build up fighters and infantry in the area that is your front line. So if only one of the space docks is really adjacent to an enemy that looks like they're building up to attack you, and you need to defend, and you want to get some fighters and infantry made over there to protect the planets and to add to the carrying capacity of the ships that you have over there, you can activate a different space dock in an area that you're not really going to use for anything and have it build over there. And that can be really useful, incredibly useful, when you're working on a Cold War type scenario of building up forces along the border. The third leader is Gurno Ajero. He is captain of the 1st Fleet. Like all third leaders, he gets activated, and you can use his ability once you have scored 3 objectives. Now, his action, which of course is only once per game, like all 3rd level heroes, is that you can choose one system that is adjacent to one of your space docks. Again, this is very easy because your space docks can move around, and you destroy all other players' infantry and fighters in that system, and then you purge this card from the game. Now, this is really cool when you're about to invade a system and take it over. You wipe them out of fighters and ground forces, you move in, you mop up the rest of the capital ships, and you're going to just be able to walk in and take those planets basically on a whim. I mean, you do still have to deal with the capital ships, but if you're dealing with a situation where they've got a couple of carriers in there with tons of fighters, wiping out the fighters makes those carriers almost useless, and really reduces the amount of opposition and the amount of throwaway guys your opponent can just take wounds on, because fighters are so cheap. People love to just take wounds on fighters and not let you kill, say, their cruisers or their dreadnoughts. So this can be a really good one-use ability to take a system that you're trying to get. It can especially be really useful when you are going towards Mechatol Rex and someone else has already taken it. Now, the mech for the Clan of Saar is Scavenger Zeta. Now, this it is a standard mech, but it has an ability that lets you get them easier. So the easier way to get them is you can deploy them. After you gain control of a planet, you may spend one trade good to place one mech on that planet. Now, this synergizes incredibly well with the scavenge ability, because you get a planet, you get a trade good. Then you can either hold that trade good to spend later on ships, or you can spend a trade good to place one mech on that planet, which that is a really awesome way to increase your ground forces early in game, and also a great way to leave some mechs behind on planets that you really want to defend, because of course mechs are much tougher than normal ground forces. So these are really, really great for defending planets, and of course have sustained damage. Because of course a normal infantry has a combat of 8, whereas a mech has a combat of 6, and again, sustained damage. So much more useful in defending those planets, and also just a really great way to get mechs without having to spend the normal amount of resources, which is 2, to construct them. Okay, let's talk strategy cards. What should be your number one priority early game to grab for the Clan of Saar? Simple. Warfare. If you can get it, grab the Warfare strategy card. This is going to be very important for you to get as much as possible in the early game. Why should you grab Warfare so much in the early game? Simple. Warfare's primary ability is to remove one of your command tokens from anywhere on the board and then put that command token back on your sheet, and then you can also redistribute command tokens around, which is also very useful, especially since as you start with 3 tokens in your fleet supply, because you have 3 ships in your starting fleet, you're going to spread those fleets out. You may want to reduce that to be able to put some of those tokens somewhere else where you might need them. But more importantly, it's because after activating a system, moving one of your carriers in there and taking the planet or planets in that system, you're going to want to remove the token from that system so you can move those fleets, so you can move that fleet again and colonize a new system, taking more planets. More planets means move more free trade goods, and on the second round means lots more planets that are going to have influence and resources that you're going to be able to spend. This is incredibly important, especially since your starting planets do not have a whole lot of resources and really not much influence at all. So you're going to want to go out there and get as much as possible, and also very important because you want to grab them before your opponents do, because grabbing them is a free, easy way to get those free trade goods, which again, you can immediately trade some in for to get mechs on some of these planets. Early game, Warfare should be your number one priority. A lot of people like to use Warfare to colonize quickly, but some people have higher priorities towards other cards and may ignore it. And if they do, good for you. Just grab it. Grab the Warfare if you can get it. Again, going to be very important for you in the early game. Now, if you're playing a 3-player game and you can get a second ability, or if someone else grabs Warfare and you're playing a larger player count game where you can only grab one of these strategy tokens, which other token should you go for? There are different choices depending on the turn. Technology is going to be really good because there are lots of great technologies you're going to want, and you only start with a single technology for the Clan of Saar, which is the anti-mass deflectors. Now, the anti-mass deflectors are nice. It does allow you to move into and through asteroid fields without effect. It also allows you to give a -1 to the attack rolls of opponent's space cannons. But it's only one technology. Plenty of other factions start out with multiple technologies. So the technology strategy card will be a good one to help boost up your technology. And we'll talk in a minute about what technologies I recommend you going for. But Other ones that might be good, trade is good because you will get 3 trade goods. Trade goods are really useful for buying stuff. And again, early on, your starting planets do not have a lot of resources. Construction is really good because it's going to help you get more of your space docks out. And of course, leadership is really good because it's going to help you get a lot more command tokens. And at some point, you're going to want more command tokens. Plus, it is the Initiative 1 card. The other ones all have pluses and minuses and reasons why you want to use them. For instance, Imperial is very important when you're needing to score some of your objective cards, and also is really good for getting more secret objectives. Diplomacy can be good when you want to stop someone from attacking you, and of course, politics can be good if you want to steal the speaker token and get some more action cards. So they all have their uses, but I do say focusing on warfare, and as a secondary, technology, trade, and leadership are good as second choices. And of course, Imperial whenever you need to score points or need to get your hand on more secret objective cards. So in regard to the secret objective cards, which secret objective cards should you be looking for? Which ones are gimmies, or the ones you really, really want that are huge for you? I have 2 in particular that I think are fantastic that you should be grabbing Imperial and digging for every time you can. And that is the Mechanize the Military, which is have 1 mech on each of 4 planets. Because of how easy it is for you to get mechs out, this is a gimme. This is going to be a very easy one for you to achieve. And the other one is Fuel the War Machine. Have 3 space docks on the game board. This is a super gimme because you're definitely going to want 3 space docks on the board because of how your second character, the commander, needs you to have 3 space docks out to unlock him. So that's going to be another one you're going to want to look for in the deck and try to get your hands on if you can. So what technologies should you be going towards? So again, you start out with the single anti-mass deflectors, which does give you access to one of your 2 faction-specific technologies. You have 2 faction-specific technologies, which are Chaos Mapping and Floating Factory 2. Now, Floating Factory 2 requires you to have 2 yellow technologies already out, so this is not one you're going to go for right away, but it ups the value of your space docks, bringing the production up to 7. They start at 5. Brings their move up to 2, which makes them much faster, which is the biggest boost in my opinion. And it also brings their capacity from a 4 to a 5, so they can hold 1 more fighter in that system. This is pretty good. It's not end all be all, but it is a nice upgrade to the factories. The biggest thing that's really good about it is upping their movement to a 2. This is very useful for that. Now, Chaos Mapping, on the other hand, is one you should go for almost right away. And the reason is, 1, it only requires you to have 1 blue technology out, which you already have with the anti-mass deflector, so you can already get this if you take the technology card. You can just research this technology, which is great. And its ability is fantastic. Other players cannot activate asteroid fields that contain 1 or more of your ships. Now, this is the first part of the ability. It's the smaller part, but it is useful for hiding fleets in asteroid fields so people can't come in and attack you. It's also really good for one of the new systems has a wormhole hidden in an asteroid field. You can put a fleet in there to protect that wormhole, and nobody can even go in there. A small fleet will do. You just throw like 1 ship in there, and that's it. It's protected. But this is the better part. At the start of your turn, during the action phase, you may produce 1 unit in a system that contains at least 1 of your units that has production. So without activating it, your mobile factories are going to be able to produce units at the beginning of your turn. As long as you have the ability to pay for those units, you can produce units without activating those systems. This is awesome. That ability is really, really, really good, and it's something you're going to want to get out early. Now, what other technologies are going to be really useful for the Clan of Saar, and especially since everybody always wants to get a War Sun technology out at some point so they can build War Suns. War Suns require 1 yellow and 3 red technologies. What are some possible yellow and red technologies to go for to get your War Sun out eventually if you're not going for the technological specialties to reduce those costs? So I've got a bunch of suggestions. So starting off with stuff to go for the War Sun. So we're going to go for some yellows and reds. Sarween tools. Now this is a 0 requirement technology. It's one of the base technologies, and it's a really good one for the Clan of Saar. It's one they should go for almost right away. It should be probably one of the first 2 they get out, because when 1 or more of your units uses production, reduce the cost of the produced units by 1. Now, get chaos mapping out first. Then get out Sarween tools. Why? Because that free 1 unit production you do with each of your factories will reduce the cost by 1. And then later you can use those factories manually to produce after using a token from your tactic pool to activate a system, move the floating factory into that system and produce. And again, it will be reduced by 1. So you split up your productions and you'll get bigger bonuses to your discounts on your units. Very useful. Another good yellow one to go for, which would be your second yellow one to get after Sarween Tools, is the Scanlink Drone Network. When you activate a system, you may explore one planet in that system that contains 1 or more of your units. Now this one is just a general one that is good for just about anybody, because getting to re-explore planets you already control is going to be really useful for helping you to find more shards and just other cool cards. So this is not one that's specifically good for the Clan of Saar, but it is one I would recommend to go for anyway if you're looking to get some yellow technologies to work towards other techs that will require you having some yellow ones out. Now, what red technologies do I recommend? You're going to need 3 red technologies out to go for the War Sun eventually, unless you're going with some technological specialties on planets. So what technologies do I recommend? The first one I recommend, which requires 0 other red technologies out, so this is one you can get pretty early in the game, is AI development algorithm. I still recommend getting the chaos mapping and the Sarween tools first, but maybe this might be one of your choices for a third tech. So when you research a unit upgrade technology, you may exhaust this card to ignore one of the prerequisites. This can be really useful when later getting upgrades to, say, your floating factory to get floating factory 2, or upgraded cruisers or dreadnoughts. It can be a very, very useful card to have. But also, when 1 or more of your units use production, you may exhaust this card to reduce the combined costs of the produced units by the number of unit upgrade technologies you own. So if you're going towards unit technology upgrades and you're getting a lot of them, this is going to help you quite a bit along with synergizing with your Sarween tools and your chaos mapping. You're gonna get like some big discounts on producing units and be able to save money a lot. This is going to need to be more of a mid to late game sort of thing though, because you're going to need to have some unit upgrades out for it to work. But you can get this out and then build up the unit upgrades, and this is really cool. So definitely a great tech. Now the next one requires you to already have one out of the red technologies, which of course would be the AI development algorithm, and this is the self-assembly routines. After 1 or more of your units use production, you may exhaust this card to place 1 mech from your reinforcements on a planet you control in that system. So you can get a free mech. Now, yeah, your mechs are pretty cheap and pretty easy to get anyway, but this is the more important part. After 1 of your mechs is destroyed, you gain a trade good. This is the part of this ability, this technology, that is even more awesome, and why I really recommend it is because you're going to be making a lot of mechs, and then you're going to want to bring your mechs to the front line and use them, and they're going to get destroyed. But if you get them destroyed, and then you're going to get 1 trade good back, so it's going to be much easier to build them again. This basically almost makes them like for free coming back out again with your discount from the Sarween tools. Basically, they will only cost 1 if you build them on their own with the Sarween tools and the chaos mapping. Use the chaos mapping to produce 1 ship, Sarween tools to get the 1 discount, and have this to get the 1 trade good back every time your mech gets destroyed. You're basically going to be getting them for free, which is fantastic. Of course, it can also be used just to build up those trade goods for when your mechs get destroyed that maybe you want to spend on ships or other types of units as well. And then the final one I was going to recommend, which requires 2 red technologies already out, which in my opinion should be the AI development algorithm and the self-assembly routines, is the Duranium Armor. Duranium Armor is just an awesome all-round red technology. During each combat round, after you assign hits to your units, repair 1 of your damaged units that did not sustain damage during this combat round. So I did recommend you going for dreadnoughts fairly early on. Your dreadnoughts are going to be in combat. The first combat round you're going to want, if you take 1 or 2 hits, 1 of those hits you're going to want to take on a dreadnought and do the sustained damage ability. But then in the second round combat, maybe you take some hits on fighters instead, and you can repair it so you can sustain damage on it again in a further round. It can really help during those knockdown, drag-out fights to keep you alive and in that battle longer, especially since dreadnoughts are going to be a big part of the strategy for the Clan of Saar, because they're big, they're tough, they have sustained damage, and they have capacity of 1. Very, very useful ability. Now, how about some green techs? What green techs should you go for if you want to go for green technologies? So the first one I would recommend in the green technologies is the psychoarchaeology. You can use technology specialties on planets you control without exhausting them, even if those planets are exhausted. So this is going to be really good for helping you to get prerequisites for unit upgrades or for technologies that require a lot of pre-existing tech. Being able to use the specializations even on spent planets is awesome, and this is going to be really awesome early on in the game when you're grabbing a lot of planets and they're all coming in exhausted. During the action phase, you can exhaust planets you control that have a technology specialty to gain one trade good. Now this second ability is really awesome because you can exhaust that planet to give you a trade good if you're not going to be using that planet during that entire round for anything else, or let's say that planet doesn't even have any resources, all it has is influence, you're not needing the influence anymore for anything. This can be really good to grab some trade goods and stockpile them. So really useful technology, I think, for the clan of Saar, especially since they're going to be stockpiling a lot of trade goods anyway. Now the second one I recommend, which has a prerequisite of 1 green, which would be your psychoarchaeology if you're going down the green technologies. You may exhaust this card at the end of your turn to ready one of your planets that has a technology specialty or one of your other technologies. This is really useful and also does nicely synergize with the psychoarchaeology. And the last one, which requires you to have 2 green already out, which you do if you already put those 2 out, is hypermetabolism. During the status phase, gain 2 command tokens instead of 1. This one is useful for just about anybody. Now, I don't think the green technologies are quite as good and useful for the clan of Saar. I think you should probably prioritize blue, yellow, and red over the green. But if you are going to get some greens, these are ones I would recommend in the green tech. Now, the blues. You start with a blue, you start with the anti-mass deflectors. I've already recommended getting the chaos mapping, which is a blue, but it is a blue faction specific. What other blue technologies would I recommend? Well, first off, dark energy tap. This is one I would recommend for everybody just because it helps you to get those exploration tokens from out in empty space. It is an incredibly useful tech. Everyone should get this. It's definitely one I recommend for the clan of Saar, but I recommend it for everybody. Next, requiring you to already have 1 blue out, so you'll be able to play it right away. Gravity Drive. After you activate a system, apply a +1 to the move value of one of your ships during this tactical action. This synergizes well with some of the other cards that give boosts to speed, because you can use one of the other cards to make your movement 1 ships match the speed of the highest movement ships on the game board, which would make it go from a 1 to a 2, and then give them a +1 movement after that, make them have movement 3. Makes your fleets much more maneuverable and much better to fly around and get into combat, get away from enemies, or go out and colonize isolated systems that are further away from your controlled planets. And the final one I wanted to recommend is the Sling Relay. Action. Exhaust this card to produce 1 ship in any system that contains one of your space docks. This also synergizes really well with all of the discounts that discount every time you do a build. You want to be able to use this as well as the chaos mapping as well as a regular build to, instead of building 3 units with 1 space dock, build 1 unit, then build 1 unit, then build 1 unit, and each time get the discount from Sarween Tools. So instead of getting a discount of 1 resource, you get a discount of 1 resource 3 times. So you get to save 3 trade goods when you're doing those buildings. And that is incredibly, incredibly useful. So that, in my opinion, is how you grok the clan of Saar. You want to move out fast. You want to take over as many planets as quickly as possible, and you want to be the first player to take Mechatol Rex. Now, because lots of other factions have bonuses to combat that you don't have, you may not be able to hold Mechatol Rex for very long, but you know what? Being able to move your floating factories into the middle of the board and eventually get one on Mechatol Rex, you can further build up your fleets there, as well as the ability to get out your mechs early for cheap and then pick them up and move them there and drop them on Mechatol Rex. These give you a fighting chance to possibly hold on to Mechatol Rex and then take the Imperial strategy card, tons, to get lots of points, while also finding those secret objectives that you really want to get you lots of points, and hopefully you'll be able to hold it long enough that when it falls and it is taken from you, you already have enough points that all you need to do is work towards some of the other objective cards that have been revealed and win the game of Twilight Imperium. This is how I like to play the Clan of Saar, but you know what? Let me know in the comments down below if there are any good strategy or tactical tips that I missed that'd be really good for playing the Clan of Saar, or any good technologies that I didn't recommend that you think are really awesome for the Clan of Saar that you like to use. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this tactical analysis of the Clan of Saar and you'd like to see me do more tactical analyses of different factions in Twilight Imperium, make sure to give this video a like. Share it on all forms of social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And comment down below and let me know what faction should I cover next. And until next time, game on. Technologies that you really think are great for the Clan of Saar? What do you think, Nico? What technologies are great for the Clan of Saar? It's his favorite faction too, because they're dog people. So you let me know in the factions down below. Puppy blooper. You let me know in the factions down. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, you were so cute. I know you wanted attention. Let Daddy finish his video, though, okay?